Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gettin Buzz'd. This is actually our third season, first episode of our third season, which sounds a little crazy. Feels like just yesterday that Michael and I had this terrible idea to spend all our time podcasting. But it's been a lot of fun and we're excited to kind of kick off the 2021 version of Gettin Buzz'd. Today we're going to be talking about HubSpot Themes. Kind of a newer feature that's been rolled out by HubSpot recently and has really kind of changed the game. And with us is Tyler. Tyler West is our lead developer at HIVE Digital Strategy and has been working in the HubSpot CMS and even back to the COS days for quite a while, building custom modules and now themes and all of these pieces. So excited to get Tyler's perspective on everything. Tyler, do you want to give an intro to yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. Like you said, I am our lead developer here at Hive, and I've been a web developer, front-end developer for probably about the past 5, 6 years, and I've been in the HubSpot ecosystem for about 4 of those. So yeah, I've seen quite a few changes, and very excited about HubSpot Themes. It's kind of revolutionizing the way you can use HubSpot.
Awesome. But before we get into that, it's day drinking time. And I think that's the only reason Tyler was like, yeah, I'll be on your podcast. So what is everyone drinking today?
I'll start. Well, I want to take a step back because the gap between season 2 and season 3 must have been so long for you, Dustin. I didn't even get a chance to finger guns or introduce myself.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So for anybody who isn't familiar with the podcast, I'm Michael Thebeau, co-host of Gettin Buzz'd. And typically there's a finger gun moment where Dustin says, "This is Michael Thebeau with me as always." I get to finger gun, so I'm a little bit ticked off, but this is how we're starting season 3.
I messed that all up.
You may have been already day drinking, but I'll let you know what I'm drinking, Dustin. It's the Lagunitas, to pay a little homage to Tyler and being from the Bay Area, the Little Something from Lagunitas.
It's a good choice. It's a good choice. I went with the original Lagunitas, just the regular IPA.
I like that IPA, man. That's a good beer.
It's a good go-to. It's a good fallback.
And they just look like the bottles even just look so cool. Like it's like almost like a throwback.
They've got good branding,
bottle, right?
Definitely, yeah.
And I am not drinking a beer. I'm drinking Breckenridge gin, and just soda. So
fresh cut of lime.
Yep,
it's nice.
I got fancy with it today.
Yeah.
So cheers.
Oh yeah, cheers everybody. Thanks for joining us, Tyler.
Yeah, definitely. I guess I should open mine, huh?
Oh yeah. Well, you could have faked it. Just pretending to drink over the bottle.
You could have shown all those empty bottles behind you.
Let's have an avalanche of glass bottles.
Yeah. Well, cool. So, like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about HubSpot themes. And I think that where we need to start is like, where has the HubSpot CMS come from? Because, for a long time, honestly, it felt like it was like the joke of HubSpot, right? Like nobody wanted it when it was the COS. They even like branded it weird where every other platform is a CMS, a content management system, but they were like, no, we're a this is a COS. And it just felt like it had no functionality, or at least not the functionality that you expect from a HubSpot product, right? It was kind of the redheaded stepchild. They had their marketing, their CRM, their sales. They didn't have service at the time, but they were focused on those hubs, and CMS or COS wasn't even a hub yet, right? That wasn't even like a focus. There was one level out of the box. That's what you get. And that's just kind of how it worked. But I'd say over the last couple of years, HubSpot's actually looked at it and said, hey, we actually have a viable product here, right? Like we can build a good CMS that also does something that no other CMS can do, and that's connected directly to your CRM, right? So you can tie everything that you're doing together. And so they rebranded to the CMS, thank God, and really kind of shifted the way that we all as marketers kind of think about the HubSpot CMS, right? And over the last year or so, they've even doubled down and said, okay, we know HubSpot knows that they can't provide everything that somebody's going to need. And so that's where a marketplace comes in. And with the introduction of themes, now they've opened up a marketplace where any business can go get a theme, they can go get a module that they need, all of those things, so that you can get rolling with your website faster and create a good product, right? And one of the kind of big issues previously was the legacy builder. I actually don't know what HubSpot calls that builder. Like, we've just been calling it the legacy builder because it's old, right? And it doesn't function like a theme. But you know, if you've used HubSpot in the past, like, you know what it looks like, where you go in and you build a template, right? You're not building a theme, you're building an individual page template where, you know, it's drag and drop on that back end, which was always awkward to me. Like, we're using a drag and drop builder where it should be development. But the issue was it wasn't powerful enough on the back end for developers. Like, when we were developing those things, like, we were bored, right? Like, there's no functionality. We can't actually like create what we want to create. It's all, you had to fit in these buckets, right? And then on the front end, it didn't give the functionality that like a marketer or a salesperson needs. Like, even something as simple as like, okay, I need this section to have a background color. Previously, you couldn't just do that on the page. You had to go into the template, edit the template, and give it a background color from there. And so we've probably all seen those portals of like, you have 30 different templates for the same kind of page, but you needed to make a small tweak, right? Like, on this page that I wanted to use the template on, I need this section to be gray instead of blue. And so we had to create a new template for that instead of just changing the color. Like, it never made sense to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. The user experience overall, it seemed like it was just like a compromise, a compromise between users on the front end and a compromise between developers. It's like they were trying to go middle of the road. While, it accomplished what it needed to do and it got things done, it was definitely clunky at times, and it ultimately like slowed down the process.
Yeah, and it just kind of, it felt like it was like a compromise. It was a middle of the road, but it put everyone in a box, right?
Right.
Like, whether it was a developer or a front end non-technical person, like, you didn't have what you needed, right? You had like enough, you had just enough to get by, but it wasn't like that functional. And so HubSpot rolled out themes, and it actually felt like kind of a slow rollout, where they made the announcement. Some people started to kind of get on board, but like, even in the marketplace, we were, for a long time, we were looking at like, oh, you have like 5 choices for themes.
Right.
Like, here are the 5 themes that you can use, and that's what you get. But so they did run a theme challenge that we took part in. They essentially reached out to partners in the HubSpot partner community and said, hey, we want people to be successful with themes, and so we need more themes in our marketplace. And so it was kind of a big step, I felt like, for HubSpot to really engage their partners to give end users what they need, right? And so now there are dozens of paid themes, there are dozens of free themes. Like, there's a ton of different options in there, and I feel like they're even better built now. The ones that kind of came out of the box, those 5 were so basic that you were still a little bit like in that box. But now, there's such strong vetting by HubSpot to say like, okay, your theme, your module, all these things in our marketplace have to hit this level, right? Like, they're not just going to put any theme up there. So there's just more options and more flexibility for everyone, I feel like, now with a more robust marketplace.
Definitely. And I feel like even those restrictions that they put on just to even submit it, that level, it really, it makes, if you're a user, if you're going there to get a theme, it kind of gives you some confidence in what you're downloading, and what you're gonna put your site on is vetted a little bit. It's gonna be compatible.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's like, even though it can be a pain in the butt for us, right, as we're like submitting modules or themes to the marketplace, like there are a lot of hoops you have to jump through, and there are a lot of boxes that you have to check. But it's all in the name of like good quality. Like HubSpot never wants to put out crap. And I think that's like, if you're familiar with WordPress, you kind of understand the theme concept, right? Like you get a theme, it comes with some like preloaded plugins there for HubSpot, their modules. But it's essentially a set of rules and files that are site-wide, right? Like everything is encapsulated there. But I think the difference is that, like with HubSpot's marketplace and those kind of things, the quality is so much higher than you get with WordPress, because WordPress has no regulation, right? Like anyone and their dog could create a WordPress theme or a WordPress plugin. And that's why you get all these issues of like, oh, this plugin doesn't work with this theme, or these plugins aren't compatible together, or, oh crap, my website just went down because I updated a plugin, where that's not really a thing with HubSpot. Right.
Yeah, you cut out a lot of those inconsistencies and weird quirks of plugins when you versus WordPress especially.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the big things, like moving to themes, and I think that legacy builder, whatever HubSpot wants to call it, is probably going to be sunset in the fairly near future, I would imagine, in favor of themes. But one of the things that you just kind of touched on is consistency, right? Like there was a struggle with that old builder to maintain consistency through your website, right? Like, how do you see themes kind of contributing to a more consistent brand?
Well, I mean, it's like an overarching and overreaching rules, for your site. Because especially if you set your site on the theme, then it's just going to make every page on there, go by those rules, versus that legacy builder. It just that you could have, there was no central rule set for each one, unless you added, style sheets or scripts to them, but that became cumbersome. And if you didn't update them all at the same time, then you had different styles on one page and then another. Even a change, like even basic branding changes, if you want to change a color of your brand, you had to go and track that down on every single one, every template, every CTA, and swap it out. Versus themes, now you just have to go in and change one global theme setting and you're good to go. So it's a lot more flexible.
Yeah, and I think that like before you could download templates from the marketplace, right? Like you could download, I want a homepage template. But the problem was you got that and it came with style sheets specific to it, and you already had style sheets. And then so you're trying to like mimic styles through multiple style sheets and track down things to change them. And it just became such a headache. And there were so many portals that I feel like just ended up with dozens of style sheets. And it was just like such a mess, because you couldn't actually, it would take you forever to track down every single instance of like you said, a color.
Right, exactly. And I mean, if anyone's ever familiar with the phrase technical debt, that would be, that doesn't help. It only helps contribute towards it. So yeah, it after a while it can be cumbersome for sure.
Right. Well, and so there's two sides to look at themes, right? Like there's the back end and the front end. And so like you're dealing mostly with the back end, right? Like building custom themes, modifying themes, things like that. Like what has your experience been as far as the development side of themes versus that legacy builder?
It's been, I mean, it's been almost night and day, especially from a developer perspective, because previously you could only really edit within their the design that code editor within the design manager. And it's a little clunky. So, with themes, they rolled out a lot of options where you can develop and test locally on your own machine, your own code editor. So it opened up so many more opportunities, and it made things so much easier to roll out. So that alone was huge for me. But then also, if I'm coordinating with, say a marketer or a copywriter on the front end, it's a lot easier for them to say what they want in a module, and then I can create that. And it just makes it so much easier for them to use, and then easier for me to build.
Right. Well, I thought it was interesting, like with the old builder, and I guess always there's been, HubSpot has their own language. They call it Hubble, right? It's very similar to other languages, but they have their own kind of style with it. And it always existed, but even with that legacy builder, but I felt like we as developers didn't really have access to do much with it, right? Like, so, we were still kind of constrained, and like if we were building a module or something like that, we used it, but it wasn't used like to build a website really. Like it was behind the scenes where we couldn't really affect things. And so that's been kind of interesting for me, is like we've transitioned to themes, and now like Hubble's a big part of what we do, right? Like we all kind of had to go through this process. Like every agency, every HubSpot developer out there had to go through this process of like, okay, well now we need to learn this language and really understand it in order to be able to build a new theme, a new template, and header, footer, whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Hubble's made a huge improvement, I would say, and it's also taken on a bigger role within HubSpot, which is nice because it opens a lot of opportunities, because before sometimes you were reliant on maybe third-party integrations to get things done. But with a lot of their newer rollouts, it's all inclusive out of the box. There's like a Hubble solution for a lot of things now, so that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then I think the flip side of the front end, right, where a marketer or salesperson, Michael's not a technical expert on the team. Like he's our sales guy, and so like him being able to go edit a page or create a page, like that's completely changed. Like the power that he has and the flexibility, in the previous life of HubSpot CMS, like you had to create templates, and you used flexible columns and hoped that like that was flexible enough, right?
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, we're going to give this a 2-column, they're equal size, right? But then Michael would go in there and be like, well, I want a 3rd column, or hey, I want this column to be a little bigger, right? I want it to be this to take 2/3, that to take a 1/3, instead of 50-50. And it was just like this headache that, okay, I got to go edit the template. Michael would go in and edit the template. He probably did this. Would go in and edit the template and break it, right? Like something would go wrong. It's not working how it's supposed to. Then he calls one of us and was like, hey, this is an issue. I need this fixed. I think that was kind of the workflow for most people, because it just, you either lived with the way it was built, the template was built, and just made your content fit to it, or you tried to fix it yourself and broke something, or you had to go to a developer and say, hey, like, here's what I need. And then the developer's like, okay, well, this is like a 5-minute change and it's annoying. I shouldn't have to do this. But now, you can go in there, Michael can go in there and say, hey, yeah, I have a 2-column here. I need it to be a 3-column. Let me just drag this over. Let me just add a new module here. Let me add a column. And it takes him 2 seconds. And so I think it's like really changed and shifted the power to marketers and to salespeople to say, hey, yeah, I have this page that I need to edit, or I need to create a new page. And I can just go do that, right? The drag and drop functionality has like gone through the roof.
Yeah, it's huge. I feel like it also cuts down a lot because there's always like this conversation between like say marketers or anybody and developers. It seems like a really easy fix, and they're like, "Yo, I just want this thing done. Why can I not do this?" And I feel like it really cuts down on that headache in that conversation if anybody's ever had that.
Right.
Just because it is easy, on the surface level, it should be easy. And I feel like this is actually taking steps to make easy things actually be easy.
Yeah, I feel like that's like every developer's like least favorite message. Hey, just an easy change, right? Just a
Yeah,
quick
yeah,
change. Like,
yeah,
like I think that you're right that I think that's probably always going to be a thing. There's always going to be something that comes up and hey, I have a quick change, and you're like, well, that
yeah.
quick change is actually like a half day,
All
you
right.
know. But you're right that like we would get those requests of like, hey, I just need a quick change. Could you change this on the template? And it ended up being like, well, no, like I've got to rebuild that, or I've got to, create a new template for this so it can do what you need it to do, but doesn't break these other pages, right?
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
or you didn't think about the other pages, you made the change and you broke those other pages,
Yeah, yeah,
you know.
exactly. That's the other flip side of it.
And so like I think there are a lot of reasons that people go with whatever CMS they want to use, right? Like there's so many of them out there. It's possible that I was on Facebook the other day and ranted about like colleges only teaching students how to use like Wix and Weebly and like all these free super basic website CMSs. But there's the WordPress, there's the Wix, there's Weebly, GoDaddy has a builder, Squarespace, and HubSpot CMS. And it's honestly HubSpot CMS to me, like for most of the time that we've been with HubSpot, we've been a HubSpot partner for 6+ years now. Most of that time, I looked at like HubSpot CMS as like, yeah, you can go play with the Wix and the Weebly. Like you're not useful to me. But over the last few years, it's changed so dramatically that we were always pro WordPress. Everything that we did, we wanted to do on WordPress because it was just more flexible. We had more power.
Mm-hmm.
But it's changed so much that like we've even gotten away from WordPress. Like we're when we're talking about like, hey, a client wants a new website, we're suggesting HubSpot, right? We're saying HubSpot CMS is actually better, which is kind of crazy to think. Like 2 years ago, we would have never said that.
Yeah, yeah. They were still very new in the space. But yeah, I feel like especially if you're wanting to engage as far as your online presence, HubSpot's really making their name in that space as far as just as far as being more than just a website builder. They're becoming a huge.
Let me hop in here because I've been letting the developers just kind of talk and everything's been a little bit over my head.
Welcome to the party, Michael.
No, yeah, I appreciate you guys letting me be on your guys' podcast today. But so I guess user experience is going to be great, like you said, from the marketer or sales or copywriter. It just makes it a lot easier in HubSpot. But if right now I'm thinking about, okay, I've got a website on Wix or Squarespace, or we've been, a WordPress website for the last 10 years. Kind of walk me through what this process looks like. Do I sign up for the HubSpot CMS and then I can pick out my theme? Do I just have to blindly select my theme, or do I get to go through and say, oh, these 3 or 4 look good? Do I need to hire a developer then because I know the user experience? Kind of walk me through what this looks like from, hey, we are looking at getting a new website. We want to do it on HubSpot.
I think there's a few different ways that somebody looks at that. If you are looking at, hey, you know, this HubSpot CMS thing might be for me. Now there are two different options. So they have a pro version and an enterprise version. And on the surface, HubSpot CMS looks more expensive than all other options. Like you look at it and, you know, pro is $300 a month. Enterprise is $900 a month. And like a lot of people get scared off by that, and they look at that like, oh God, like why would I do that? Right? Like Wix is $10 a month, or you know, WordPress is free. But I think that the difference is people aren't considering like additional costs that they have to take into account: maintenance, security, CDN, hosting, like all of these different pieces, SSL certificates. Like there's so many different pieces that go into the cost of a website, but people kind of get scared off by like, oh, it's $300. Why would I spend $300 a month on my website? When in reality, like you're spending that whether you realize it or not.
Right.
And you know, you're dealing, if you know, WordPress has like a quarter of all websites in the world are on WordPress. But anyone that's on WordPress also has to deal with hosting and getting your own SSL certificate and managing if you have like malware or hacking attempts. You have to manage all of your updates, your WordPress versions, your plugin versions, your theme versions. You know, if something goes down, you're kind of at the mercy of your hosting provider, right? Like something happens, a plugin gets updated, it's incompatible, your website goes down. Now you're on the phone with GoDaddy or, you know, Bluehost or whoever saying, hey, my website's down, help. And, you know, you're just kind of at their mercy, where all of those things are kind of taken care of on the HubSpot side. But I think, you know, once you kind of decide whether you're a HubSpot CMS Pro or Enterprise kind of business, then you start to look at, okay, what does our website need to be? Because you can have a custom website or a custom theme built. You know, we see a lot that people have a website on WordPress or something like that, and they're like, hey, we want the same website, right? Like we want it to look this same way. We just need it to perform better. We want to take, you know, it needs to be faster. It needs to have better content. It needs to tie to our CRM. You know, all of those things. So in that case, you can have a developer build a custom theme to match what you already have. And that's what's beautiful about the new CMS, is that you can do that, right? Like we do that a lot actually, where we're matching the style of something else, of another site, or even like a wireframe or a mock-up, something like that, so that it comes through in the HubSpot CMS just like you want it to. But once you're in there, you do have access. Once you have a HubSpot account, you have access to the HubSpot Marketplace. And that's where you can look through and see both paid and free versions of themes. And so I think there's like 17 free versions now. Shameless plug, we did build 2 of them. So our Buzz theme and Drop theme are free in the HubSpot Marketplace. I'll include a link with this video. But you can go in there, you can download the themes. It takes 30 seconds to install, and then you can start building pages and start editing things. And, you know, you kind of have that out of the box place to get started, and you don't necessarily need a developer because that's already been built, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I do think I want to bring up the point that with WordPress, like you mentioned, like 25% of the world's websites are built on WordPress. When you were talking about HubSpot, you were saying there's dozens of, you know, free themes, dozens of paid themes. And at first you think dozens, like that's not very many. But then you think about WordPress and it's like, do you know how cluttered their marketplace in general is for just different integrations and APIs and themes and X, Y, and Z? And you could be buying the wrong one, or one that's not going to work well for what you want it to do, or whatever it might be. And just because there's 17 free themes, it doesn't mean every 17th website is going to look the exact same. There's definitely, you know, kind of that customizable feel to it. It's going to be your own website, something that you're proud of. Mm-hmm. But with WordPress, it just gets so convoluted, and crazy that you could miss the actual, tool that you need, or be buying the wrong one, or be buying a low quality one, or whatever it might be, versus HubSpot has that quality.
Well, and that's what's so hard is like nothing's regulated with WordPress, right? Like WordPress does not manage or own like those themes, those plugins. Like they have their random free ones that WordPress develops, the 2019 theme that has no functionality. But in general, anyone can build a WordPress theme. Anyone can build a WordPress plugin or extension. And there's no checks and balances, right? They built it, they can sell it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, that sucks, right?
Right.
And so it's just like there's no regulation to quality. And and there's just so many options out there that, like you said, I'm looking for a plugin to do X, but like finding that can be really difficult. And like you look through like the documentation or the reviews or the description of a plugin, and like I feel like we've all anyone who's ever worked on a WordPress website, you're like, oh yeah, that's what I need, and then you get it and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah,
it didn't do anything that I needed it to.
Right.
And it's so frustrating. Whereas the HubSpot Marketplace is just so much more refined, and it's so much smaller. Like to your point, like the number of themes, the number of modules, things like that doesn't even scratch the surface of WordPress.
Right.
But it's growing, and it's growing with quality, not with just some random guy is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna throw together some terrible code and make this, a minimum viable plugin for one little thing that doesn't work with your theme,
Right. Yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of like that. And we love WordPress. We still develop on WordPress, and a lot of our clients still have WordPress websites. So it's not to say you're not going to find quality over there ever.
Sure.
Or you can't build a great website off of WordPress, because you certainly can. But it's kind of that quality of like a big box store of like Target. You're going to get a great website. You know what you're going to get. On HubSpot, you're getting that boutique. It's a little bit more individual. It's probably going to be, last longer, and it just has kind of that better feel for you.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of how flexible do you need things to be? How easy do you need the front end to be for your marketing or sales team? How much flexibility do you need for your development team? And like, do you want to be managing all the maintenance stuff, the security stuff, the issues that come up? And do you need it tied to your other efforts, right? Like having that was one of the big things for us. Like we moved to a HubSpot CMS website, I guess a couple years ago now. And like that was a big thing for us, that we were able to tie it to our CRM. We can create smart content. We can tie it to our marketing efforts. We can tie it to our sales efforts, service efforts. Like everything's under one roof, and it just makes management, reporting, all of that so much easier and so much better. Yeah,
really avoids that kind of like Frankenstack.
It's
dilemma.
Right. It can be super tough when you as you're kind of putting things together, looking at like, okay, my CRM is HubSpot, but I'm using, Zoho for this, and I'm using Pardot for that. And I also have Salesforce, and my website's on WordPress, and my chat is through Drift. And like, there's just, you have a million different places and a million different logins for things, and they don't all necessarily like talk well,
Right.
So I think that's a shift that I think every business is needing to make, is the more you can have like an all on one, the better.
Totally. All right. Well, thank you for letting me chime in and steal your podcast, Tyler.
Hey, no, go right ahead, man. Go right ahead.
Awesome. So Tyler, do you have any, just to kind of wrap up this topic, are there any tips that you have for somebody that is looking at okay, maybe it is time to look at the HubSpot CMS. Where do I go with this? How do I get started? Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, if it was me and I was just now looking into it, I would just go on there and just play with them. Like you were saying, there's a bunch of free ones. You can go on there, download ours, give them a look over, see if it's going to work. You can play with the settings, and it's not going to be, it's not permanent right away. But I think what you'll find is pretty early on that it's just a lot easier to use, and you're going to be saving yourself a lot of time and a lot of headache if you were to go forward with it. Granted, there may be, an investment of time on your part to get it up and running, but in the long term, you'll be thanking yourself that you did it. And so that would be my first tip. Would just go to the marketplace, download something, just give it a shot, just check it out.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, you're not going to break anything. I feel like everyone's always kind of worried about that, right? Like, if I don't
Yes.
want to just play with things, because what if I break HubSpot? Well, that's not really a thing. Where, if you just start downloading a bunch of plugins and playing with a lot of things on a WordPress site, like, you have the potential to break things.
Yeah, it sounds like a recipe for disaster. I wouldn't recommend that with WordPress, but yeah, definitely. Yeah, just give them a shot. Yeah, I think if you've been in HubSpot for a little while, or even if you haven't been, even if you're coming over from another framework, it'll be, a sigh of relief, or if not, it'll open up more opportunities for you. So
Yep. And one thing that we didn't really mention is that themes can be used outside of the CMS too. So landing pages, thank you pages, your blog, all of that can be run through a HubSpot theme as well. So even if you're just using marketing or whatever, like, you can now use themes to better support those other pages. So you don't have to have your whole website on HubSpot in order to use themes.
right, yeah, that's a good point.
Cool. So the last kind of segment here is, how's the buzz? How's that Lagunitas treating you guys?
Well, because I didn't speak for the first 20 minutes of the podcast, I got through quite a bit of my beer. But I've always loved Lagunitas since the ripe age of 21. It's always been a go-to for me. So I do like the IPA. I'm jealous Tyler's been drinking that, but still love that ale that they've got.
Yeah, I've hardly touched mine, but I'm gonna put in some work here shortly, and I can't complain. I can't complain. I like a good IPA. So
There you go. I don't think I've actually ever had Lagunitas, and I'm a little bummed that I didn't get some for the podcast today.
Highly
wow,
recommend.
wow. Yeah, something came up. I suddenly got to go all of a sudden.
If you like IPAs, Dustin,
I do.
Lagunitas IPA, it's like not too powerful, not too hoppy. They don't try to, it's just very simple sipping. I should
Yeah,
work for them.
you
Simple
should. That was
sipping.
simple sipping is good.
All of a sudden, they have a new tagline, and we're going to see it on commercials.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I've had mine on the podcast before, so.
Oh my God. I was going to make fun of you because I didn't see you take a single sip the entire time.
I did.
But it didn't work.
Either that or Arrow's been coming around just drinking it up.
He's drunk.
Yeah.
No, I'm a fan. I like the Breckenridge and Boulder gins. Like, I feel like they're both really good local gins. So those are kind of my go-tos.
You're a gin guy.
I am. Well, great. Thanks for joining us, Tyler. Excited about season 3. We're going to have every podcast transcribed now. You'll have a blog post that you can read about it. And if you missed anything or need to go back and see what Tyler said in that one part, you can absolutely do that. We'll have that coming out here shortly as well. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.
See you guys.